Betsy Horvath has long believed Mark Redwine killed his son Dylan.
Absolutely.
Why do you say that?
Because he was violent.
She too was involved in a custody dispute with him. They had 2 kids together. According to this indictment, he told Horvath that he would kill the kids before he let her have them.
I didn't let him have the kids.
Mark Redwine was arrested more than 4.5 years after his son Dylan disappeared. The 13-year-old was last seen alive November 2012 during a court-ordered visit with his dad. The following year, some of his remains were found just 8 miles from his father's home. At the time, Mr. Redwine told Denver 7 by phone he wanted to know where Dylan's remains were found so he could be close to his son.
It's hard for them to describe to me the exact location that they found these remains. I've asked members of law enforcement to stop by, and I want to talk to them about going to the location so I can be close to my son.
But the indictment reveals a subsequent search found Dylan's blood in multiple locations at Mark's home. A police dog detected a cadaver scent in Redwine's living room and his washing machine. Dylan's skull was found in November of 2015, just 1.5 miles away. It had injuries consistent with blunt force trauma.
My greatest hope is that Dylan gets justice.
Betsy Horvath says the arrest is just the beginning of a long road ahead, and her heart breaks for Dylan's mom and brother.
The scariest part is it could have been my child.
Absolutely tragic, and this case has taken on a life of its own in many different ways, and you heard from the defendant himself right there. He has spoken a lot through the years, including on Dr. Phil. So I'm wondering how all of this is going to impact this upcoming case. Let's bring in great criminal defense attorney out in Denver, Jeffrey Wolf, back with us. Great to see you, Jeffrey. What do you think about this defendant, Redwine? It seems like he's one who likes to talk, has spoken a lot in the past. I've watched episodes of Dr. Phil with him and you know, his ex-wife on there talking about all of this. How do you think all of that ends up impacting this upcoming trial?
It's going to be tough to know, Vinnie, because so much time has passed since he was all over the news. Being out here in Colorado, this is a case that we've been living with here in our state for a long time. And we have seen him all over the news in various different ways. We've seen the wife all over the news, the Dr. Phil stuff, like you said. And, you know, it's obviously a defense attorney's nightmare to have your client out there giving a ton of statements to anyone, much less something that's recorded and in the news for this long. And the good news is he never came out and said, hey, I did this, help me. So I guess that helps his attorney a little bit. But the amount of interviews he's given, the amount of times he's been on the news has just not been great. And, you know, this video that's playing right now, my God, does that not look great, especially with the music they played over it. Just not good.
No. And here's another part of all of this, the forensic evidence. You know, you're talking about finding forensic evidence, and they believe that they can tie that to where he was living. The circumstantial evidence, and I love circumstantial evidence. I know people try to attack it. I love it because it's common sense. It's playing into common sense. And he goes to visit with his father, and then he's never seen again. And we've got forensic evidence, you know, of blood in his home. He's found 8 miles from there. I mean, jurors can put 2 and 2 together. They're not stupid.
Spoken like a true prosecutor, Vinnie. But ultimately, at the end of the day, blood in his home is not necessarily evidence of death. It could be evidence of any number of things. I'm sure that the defense will go with that. He's got very good representation from our state public defender's office. We've got one of the best in the nation. And blood in the home does not mean death. Blood in the home means some sort of issue occurred in that home. How much blood is there? What other evidence is there that ties that blood to recency? I mean, this is a case where the investigation took 4.5 years. If the evidence was so clear cut and if this was so obvious, why no charges for 4.5 years? It doesn't make any sense. And that's what the defense is going to have to do here, is they're going to have to attack all of this circumstantial evidence, like you're saying, and make it into exactly what it is, an investigation that took 4.5 years, because it ain't so obvious, and maybe it's not beyond a reasonable doubt.
I have a feeling he is going to take the witness stand. I don't think he can help himself. I think that's part of his makeup, part of his problem, part of who he is. He has spoken so much in the past. I think he ends up taking the witness stand? Because it's ultimately his choice, right? I know defense attorneys like you and really good ones like you can give the appropriate advice at the time based upon how the case is going, but ultimately he's got to make that decision.
That's correct. So in any case, what you're going to do is you're going to sit down with your client well before a trial to talk about what testifying looks like, whether it's a good idea, whether it's a bad idea, kind of, mock up what a prosecutor is going to do for them, because it's not going to be the same as when they get up there on direct with their lawyer. It's going to be much more adversarial and cross. And you try to mock it up for them and let them get a feel for it and what it's going to be like and what the different, holes that they could fall in and the different ways that their temper could flare or things like that. And then you have another talk as trial gets closer. You start to strategize, decide what you're planning to have happen. But any defense attorney that's done enough trials will tell you that until that Curtis advisement halfway through the trial, where the judge tells them it is your decision whether you testify, it is your decision whether you get up on that stand or whether you remain silent, and then you get that 5-minute conversation out in the hallway, or in this case, probably in the courtroom, given COVID, you're going to have a different conversation with your client sometimes, and all of those plans and all those bits of preparation can go out the window. So you have to be prepared in either event, and it will be his choice in Colorado and throughout the country. It is. And so, yeah, he could make that decision, but I am hopeful and confident that his lawyers have him prepared to make the best decision for his defense.
What can you tell us? Because I'm not that familiar with Colorado. I was out there for the Kobe Bryant case years ago, but haven't spent a ton of time out there, out for the John Bonet for part of that as well. Where exactly is this, and what's that part of the state like, and what are those jurors like?
So La Plata County is very rural, and so Colorado basically has the middle of our state is a lot of metropolitan areas, and then down south, once you get to Colorado Springs, you run into a little bit more of that, and then you basically have the rest of the state. And the rest of the state is very rural, it is very conservative, and it is full of these open areas like you see in the pictures that have been shown throughout this broadcast. And the jurors down there are conservative as well. And a lot of times defense lawyers, we're thought of as liberals. Maybe some of us are, maybe some of us aren't. But I love a conservative jury, because a conservative jury is somebody who usually is going to hold the government's feet to the fire, and they're going to make them prove their case, because they don't want their rights trampled, and they see it for what it is. And, prosecutors, and I'm sure you did it back in the day, they love to carry that flag with them into the courtroom and represent the people of the state of Colorado. I yanked that flag from them in a rural jurisdiction, because I represent the Constitution, and I represent somebody who could be sitting in that chair after my client. And so rural jurors are extremely, extremely interesting in Colorado, because on one hand, they tend to be pro-prosecution and pro-law enforcement, but on the other hand, they care more about the Constitution and their rights than anything. And so they really cut both ways. It's quite interesting.
All right, this defendant is a mess. I mean, I've seen him in court a couple times. He looks a mess. I mean, what kind of makeover do you think they're going to give him?
They're going to give him the best makeover that our state's money can buy, okay? They are going to get him a haircut. They're going to get him proper clothing. I was a public defender at the beginning of my career, and we always made sure what we called it was dressing him out for trial. He is going to be looking sharp. He's probably going to be wearing the same suit or one of two suits for the entire trial, so the jurors with keen eyes for that will notice that he's not switching day to day like most of the lawyers in the courtroom will be. He's going to have one tie, one shirt, and maybe two jackets, something like that. But they're going to get him a haircut. They're going to get him shaved. They're going to make sure he looks presentable. It wouldn't be the first trial where somebody walks in looking one way for all of the court proceedings that we see and then looks different at trial. It's part of our job as lawyers is to make sure that we humanize our client and we give our client the same advantages that anyone would have, whether they have the means to clean themselves up or not.
All right. We see the world differently, Jeffrey, but I respect what you do, and we need strong criminal defense attorneys to make the system work. So thanks so much. Jeffrey Wolf joining us from Denver tonight. Thank you, sir.
Good to have you back, Vinnie. Thanks.
All right. Up next, on the docket, that's right. Status conference coming up October 16th on this one. Then we've got a trial date, October 28th, 2020. We'll see if it's a real date. It's been put off many times. You've got the COVID issues, everything else going on. But if it happens, you'll hear about it right here on Court TV.